In November 1952, a young university student disappeared on her journey home. Hours later, she was discovered on the ground of her family's large estate near Belfast. Her name was Patricia Curran. She was 19 years old. Her father was one of the most powerful legal figures in Northern Ireland. The authorities soon announced that they had found the person responsible. A quiet 20-year-old RAF technician named Iain Hay Gordon confessed and was declared guilty. For almost half a century, the official story remained in place. Then the conviction collapsed. The confession was ruled inadmissible. The evidence against Gordon was not enough. The man who had spent years locked inside a psychiatric hospital was finally cleared. By clearing his name, reopened an even darker question. Who actually killed Patricia Curran? And why did so many troubling details surrounding her final night remain unanswered? This is the story of Patricia Curran, the wrongful conviction of Iain Hay Gordon, and one of Northern Ireland's most disturbing unsolved murder. Before we begin, this documentary is based on historical reporting, legal records, and publicly available information. Iain Hay Gordon's conviction was overturned and he must be regarded as innocent. No uncharged person mentioned in connection with this case should be treated as responsible for Patricia's death. Patricia Doris Curran was born into a prominent Northern Irish family. In 1952, she was 19 years old and studying at Queen's University, Belfast. Her father, Lancelot Curran, was a respected judge and the former Attorney General for Northern Ireland. The family lived at Glen House in Whiteabbey, County Antrim, several miles north of Belfast. It was an impressive property surrounded by extensive grounds. From the outside, the Currans appears to have status, security, and influence. But Patricia was not simply the daughter of an important judge. She was a young woman trying to build a life of her own. Reports describe her as independent and confident. She had spent time working before attending university, and she was said to have disagreed with her mother about her clothes, friendship, and lifestyle. Historical accounts also describe tension inside the Curran household. Those family disagreements become part of the later discussions surrounding the case. They do not establish that anyone in Patricia's family harmed her, but they are important because the first investigation did not examine the family home and its occupants with the same intensity that would be expected in a modern murder inquiry. On Wednesday, November 12, 1952, Patricia attended university in Belfast. That evening, her boyfriend John Seal reportedly go with her to the bus. He later said that she boarded the 5 o'clock bus traveling toward Whiteabbey. From there, Patricia should have continued home to Glen House. What happened after she left the bus remains uncertain. She did not arrive inside the family home at the expected time. As the evening passed, concern grew. Members of the Curran family eventually began searching the grounds. Shortly after 2 o'clock on the morning of November 13, Patricia was found lying among shrubbery on the estate. She had suffered multiple knife wounds. The attack was severe, but this documentary will not describe Patricia's injuries in graphic details. Her family placed her inside the vehicle and drove her to a nearby doctor's surgery. Medical evidence later indicated that Patricia had already been dead for several hours. From the beginning, the scene contained details that raised difficult questions. Patricia had been discovered outdoors during a wet weather, yet reports state that some of her belongings were found in a net ground a short distance away and appeared dry. Folders were reportedly among those belongings, but their contents were not scattered across the ground. This led some observers to question whether the items had fallen naturally during a struggle or had been placed there later. The position of Patricia's body also attracts attention. Rigor mortis had already begun, indicating that significant time had passed since her death. Some later commentators argued that her position did not fit comfortably with the idea that she had remained in exactly the same place through that period. This observation created a troubling possibility. Could Patricia have died somewhere else before being moved outside? That has never been proven. It remains a theory based on disputed interpretation of the scene. There were also questions about the timeline. According to the Irish Times, John Steele maintained that Judge Curran telephoned him at around 10 minutes past 2 in the morning to ask which bus Patricia had taken. However, the same report stated that Judge Curran had already contacted the police before that call and told them Patricia had taken the 5 o'clock bus. They may have been an innocent explanation. Memories can also become unreliable across many decades, but inconsistencies like this later contribute to concern about how careful the original investigation had tested the family account. The murder of a judge's daughter created enormous pressure. Patricia's father was not an ordinary member of the public. He was part of Northern Ireland legal establishment. Police interviewed and fingerprinted large number of local men, but according to historical reporting, members of the Curran family were not formally interviewed until several days after Patricia's death. The police were also reportedly denied permission to conduct an immediate full search of Glen House. That refusal was accepted. Today, investigators would normally examine the victim's home, clothing, relationships, communication, and family environment immediately. In 1952, the status of Patricia's father may have affected how officers approached the family. There is no court finding that Judge Curran deliberately interfered with the investigation. However, the unequal treatment of potential witnesses became one of the case's lasting controversies. Weeks passed without an arrest. The authorities offered a reward for information. Investigators then turned their attention toward the young Scottish airman stationed near Whiteabbey. His name was Iain Hay Gordon. Gordon was 20 years old and worked as an RAF technician. He had met members of the Curran family through a local Presbyterian church. Patricia's brother Desmond knew him through religion activities. Gordon had met Patricia, but there was no strong evidence that they had a close relationship. He said he had not been near Glen House on the night of the murder. However, he could not provide an independent witness who had seen him during the important period. Gordon said he had remained at his base practicing his typing for an examination. Many of the other men had gone into Belfast that evening, leaving him without a clear alibi. Not having an alibi does not prove guilt, but investigators treated the gap in his evening as suspicious. In January 1953, approximately 2 months after Patricia's death, Gordon was brought in for questioning. The interrogation became the center of the entire case. Gordon was young, socially vulnerable, and frightened. He had no lawyer present. He was questioned intensely over several days. According to his later account, detectives repeatedly told him that he was responsible. They proposed versions of events and pressured him to agree. Gordon also said investigators threatened him to expose deeply personal information about him. At that time, same-sex relationships between men were illegal. Public exposure could destroy a person's career, freedom, and family life. Gordon later explained that he became so terrified and exhausted that he would have agreed to almost anything to end the questioning. Eventually, he signed a written confession. The words in that document became the foundation of the prosecution, but Gordon maintained that he had not written the confession and that it did not represent the truth. A confession can appear to be the strongest possible evidence. People naturally ask why an innocent person would admit to murder, but false confessions are real. They can occur when someone is isolated, frightened, exhausted, threatened, or made to believe that cooperation is the only way out. A vulnerable person can begin agreeing with suggestions simply to stop the pressure. The original court did not have the modern psychological understanding of false confessions that existed today. Gordon's trial lasted only several days. In March 1953, he was found guilty but insane. Under the law in force at the time, this did not produce an ordinary prison sentence. Instead, Gordon was detained at Holywell Psychiatric Hospital in County Antrim. He had been declared responsible for a murder he said he did not commit and labeled insane despite maintaining that he was sane. He remained in the institution for approximately 7 years. Gordon was released in 1960. He returned to Glasgow and tried to rebuild his life. He worked quietly and lived under the weight of the conviction. According to later reports, few people around him knew his complete history. His family never accepted the verdict. His parents and supporters continued trying to clear his name. The campaign lasted for decades. Lawyers, journalists, politicians, and the researcher began examining the original evidence. They found that the case depended overwhelmingly on the confession. There was no reliable forensic evidence placing Gordon at the scene. No witness had seen him attack Patricia. No murder weapon had been conclusively connected to him. There was no convincing motive. The confession was not simply one part of the evidence. Without it, the prosecution case had almost nothing left, but Gordon faced an unusual legal problem. The old verdict of guilt but insane had later been replaced by a different legal form. Because of the way the law had changed, he initially struggled to obtain the same appeal rights available to other convicted people. His supporters campaigned for a change. Eventually, Parliament amended the law allowing Gordon's case to be reconsidered. The Criminal Case Review Commission referred the conviction back to the Northern Ireland Court of Appeal. In December 2000, Iain Hay Gordon returned to court. He was now 68 years old. He had spent nearly 48 years officially connected to Patricia Curran's murder. The Court of Appeal examined the interrogation and confession. The judge concluded that the confession should not have been admitted as evidence. Once the confession was removed, the prosecution accepted that the conviction could not stand. Gordon was found not guilty. His name was finally cleared. Members of Parliament later described the case as one of the longest miscarriages of justice in British history. For Gordon, the ruling arrived after most of his life had already passed. He had lost 7 years inside a psychiatric institution. He had lived for decades under another name. His mother had reportedly spent much of her money trying to prove his innocence. Clearing Gordon did not return the years taken from him, but it corrected the official record. He had not been proven to be Patricia's killer. The legal victory also returned the case to its true position. Patricia Curran's murder was unsolved. With Gordon cleared, attention returned to the original investigation. Why had the authorities focused so heavily on him? Why had the family home not been searched immediately? Why had Patricia's belongings reportedly remained dry? Why did the position of her body create questions? And why had investigators accepted a confession that lacked reliable supporting evidence? Different theories had been proposed over the years. Some campaigners and journalists suspected that Patricia may have reached Glen House alive and died inside or close to the home. Others believed she could have met someone while traveling from Belfast. There were suggestions involving a secret romantic relationship, a personal dispute, or someone known to Patricia. None of those possibilities has been established. One of the most controversial theories concerned Patricia's murder, Patricia Curran. Historical reporting described arguments between mother and daughter and stated that some of Gordon's supporters suspected Doris. However, Patricia Curran was never convicted or formally proven responsible for Patricia's death. She is no longer alive and cannot answer the allegations. It would therefore be wrong to present that theory as fact. Family conflict is not proof of murder. Suspicious circumstances are not the same as evidence. Another possibility is that Patricia was attacked by someone outside the family who was never properly identified. The weakness of the original investigation means that potentially important evidence may have been overlooked or lost. The crime scene was disturbed when Patricia was moved. Forensic science in 1952 was far more limited than it is today. DNA testing did not exist. Evidence storage standards were different. Witnesses have died. Memories have faded. Glen House itself was later demolished. Even if investigators reopened every surviving file, the passage of time would make a prosecution extremely difficult. The police service of Northern Ireland has retained extensive historical material connected to the case. An official Freedom of Information decision published in 2015 referred to 13 boxes that could contain relevant record. That does not mean those records contain the killer identity, but it shows how large and complicated the surviving case archive became. Patricia's story is often told through the powerful men surrounding it. Her father was a judge. The convicted man became the victim of a major miscarriage of justice. Lawyers, police officers, and politicians argued over the case for decades. But at the center of everything was a 19-year-old woman whose life ended before it had truly begun. Patricia had started university. She had friendship, plans, and disagreement like any other young adult. Her personality was sometimes judged through the strict social expectations of the 1950s. Reports called her rebellious or headstrong. Those labels should never distract from the fact that she was the victim of a crime. Nothing about her clothing, friendship, or independence made her responsible for what happened. The wrongful conviction created two victims. Patricia lost her life. Gordon lost years of freedom and almost 5 decades of his reputation. And because investigators built the case around the wrong man, the real person responsible was never brought to justice. The most important question is not simply whether there was a cover-up. There is no proven evidence establishing a coordinated cover-up. The deeper issue is how power, status, and pressure can shape an investigation. The police needed an answer. Patricia's father belonged to the legal establishment. Gordon was an isolated young airman with no powerful family defending him. One person was treated with respect and caution. The other was questioned until he confessed. That difference became the foundation of a catastrophic failure. In December 2000, the court corrected the conviction, but it could not solve Patricia's murder. No trial identified another killer. No later forensic breakthrough produced confirmed suspects. More than 7 decades after Patricia was discovered at Glen House, the central mystery remained. Did she reach home that evening? Was she killed on the estate or somewhere else? Were her belongings deliberately arranged? Did the killer live close to her? And did the original investigation miss its best chance to find the truth?